The battle in which Queen Elizabeth I's ship Revenge met its tragic end was one of the most heroic and dramatic moments in English naval history. This engagement, fought in 1591 near the Azores, saw the Revenge facing an overwhelming Spanish fleet, and it is remembered for the valiant leadership of Sir Richard Grenville, the determination of his crew, and the tragic fate of the ship. To understand the depth of the battle, it is essential to break it down in terms of strategy, tactics, and the various events that took place. Prelude to the battle, the strategic context. The backdrop to the battle was the ongoing conflict between England and Spain. The Spanish, under King Philip II, had a powerful fleet and had been waging war against England for years. England's navy, under Queen Elizabeth I, was smaller but agile and increasingly adept at naval warfare. Sir Richard Grenville, a veteran sailor and a staunch supporter of the Queen, was tasked with disrupting Spanish activities in the Atlantic and intercepting Spanish ships bound for the New World. Grenville's ship, the Revenge, was part of an English fleet that had been operating in the Azores, a group of islands that lay along key Spanish trade routes. In August 1591, while patrolling these waters, Grenville's fleet encountered a Spanish convoy, a massive force under the command of Don Alonso de Bazan, one of Spain's most experienced naval officers. The Spanish fleet consisted of at least 53 ships, many of them heavily armed and well supplied, and was escorting valuable treasure-laden ships from the New World. In contrast, the English fleet was significantly smaller and less equipped, comprising just a few ships, with the Revenge being the largest and most formidable. Despite knowing that the odds were stacked against him, Grenville made the bold decision to engage the Spanish force, reasoning that even a delayed or costly confrontation could help disrupt the Spanish supply lines. The opening of the battle, a bold decision to engage. On August 31, 1591, the Revenge came upon the Spanish fleet. Grenville knew that fighting in open water would give him some advantage in terms of maneuverability, but he also realized that the enemy was far superior in both numbers and firepower. Nevertheless, he chose to fight rather than retreat. According to some reports, Grenville's orders were to engage the enemy to the last man, if necessary. The Revenge's crew, though outnumbered, was highly trained, and many of them had seen action in previous battles. Grenville himself was a fierce and experienced commander, and he was determined to make a stand, believing that he could inflict significant damage to the Spanish fleet and buy time for reinforcements to arrive. He maneuvered the Revenge in close to the Spanish fleet and opened fire. The tactics and the initial skirmish. The Revenge engaged the Spanish ships with a broadside attack, using her heavy guns to deliver powerful volleys at the enemy. Grenville employed a tactic of breaking the line, aiming to divide the Spanish forces and disrupt their cohesion. The English crew were expert gunners, and for the first few hours of the battle, the Revenge was able to deal considerable damage to the Spanish ships, especially their lighter, more vulnerable vessels. The Spanish responded with a well-coordinated counterattack, bringing their superior numbers into play. They began to encircle the Revenge, closing in from multiple sides. Grenville's ship, though fighting valiantly, was quickly outnumbered and began to take heavy fire from all directions. The Spanish ships, though not as fast or agile, had the advantage of size and firepower. As the battle progressed, the Revenge's sails were shredded by cannon fire, and her hull began to take on water. Grenville continued to direct the fight from the deck, giving orders to his crew to fight on, refusing to surrender even as the situation grew increasingly dire. The Spanish encirclement, the tide turns. After several hours of fierce combat, the situation became increasingly untenable for the Revenge. The Spanish fleet had closed in, and the English ship was now surrounded. The Revenge was hit by multiple broadsides, and the ship's hull began to take on more water. The Revenge was badly damaged, with masts shot away and the ship's weapons rendered largely ineffective. At this point, the Spanish launched a boarding action. Several Spanish ships, including the flagship of Don Alonso de Bazan, came alongside the Revenge, and Spanish soldiers swarmed aboard the English vessel. The fighting on the decks of the Revenge was brutal, with English sailors fighting hand-to-hand against Spanish soldiers. Despite being surrounded and overwhelmed, the English crew fought valiantly, determined to defend their ship and their commander to the last. In the midst of the fighting, Sir Richard Grenville was wounded. Accounts vary, but it is widely believed that he was shot in the chest by a Spanish musket. He was taken below deck and attended to by the ship's surgeons, but his condition worsened as the battle raged on. Despite his severe injuries, Grenville remained in command, refusing to surrender and ordering his men to fight on. The last stand, desperation and death. As the battle continued, the Revenge was in a state of collapse. Her mainmast was gone, and the ship was rapidly sinking. Grenville, still on board and commanding the battle from his sickbed, was determined not to let the Spanish capture the ship without a fight. He famously ordered that the ship be scuttled, sunk deliberately to prevent it from falling into enemy hands. Grenville's determination was legendary. Even as the ship sank beneath him, he refused to abandon it. Reports suggest that he died during the final stages of the battle, either from his wounds or from exhaustion. Some say that his last words were a defiant declaration of English strength and pride, even in the face of overwhelming odds. As the Revenge sank, the remaining English crew were either killed in battle or taken prisoner by the Spanish. The Spanish, unable to salvage the wreck, eventually withdrew. They had won the battle, but at a heavy cost. The Revenge had inflicted significant damage on the Spanish fleet, and the resistance put up by Grenville and his crew left a lasting impression on their enemies. Aftermath: a heroic legacy. Though the Revenge was lost, the legacy of Sir Richard Grenville's final stand endured. News of the battle spread quickly throughout England, and Grenville became a national hero. His courage, determination, and refusal to surrender in the face of impossible odds became a symbol of English defiance against the might of Spain. The story of the Revenge was immortalized in Sir Walter Raleigh's famous poem The Revenge, which celebrated Grenville's bravery and the gallant fight of his crew. Despite the loss of the ship, the battle became a rallying cry for England, and the bravery of the English Navy would continue to inspire future generations of sailors. The impact of the battle. The Battle of the Revenge remains one of the most remarkable and tragic naval engagements in English history. It showcased the courage and skill of the English Navy, and though the Revenge was ultimately lost, the battle itself was a testament to the indomitable spirit of the crew and their commander. Sir Richard Grenville's leadership and sacrifice would inspire not only his contemporaries but also generations of English sailors, ensuring that his name and the name of his ship would never be forgotten.